She told the 911 operator she'd been shot by a stranger in her own home. She was half right. She had been shot. There was no stranger. Midday, August 10th, 2023. A call hits the Muskingum County dispatch line. A woman's voice, shaking, breathless, describing a nightmare. Her apartment torn apart. Her boyfriend missing. A stranger silhouette moving through the hallway behind her. Then a gunshot. Then screaming. Then nothing but her panicked breathing. And a dispatcher begging her to get out. Officers are on scene in minutes. They find a woman bleeding from a gunshot wound to thigh, sprawled on the living room floor, a revolver lying nearby. The apartment looks ransacked, drawers hanging open, furniture shoved aside, personal items scattered like a storm blew through. It has all the hallmarks of a home invasion gone catastrophically wrong. Then they open the bedroom closet, wrapped in trash bags, bound at the feet and torso with duct tape, a comforter thrown over the top, like someone was trying to make him vanish. Thomas Waddle, 66 years old, shot once, execution style, a single round at the back of the skull. This was not a robbery. This was staged. And the woman bleeding on the floor was either the victim of something monstrous, or she built the monster herself. Stick around, because the story she told police that day was airtight for about 6 hours. What unraveled it is one of the most chilling digital trails investigators have ever pulled off a phone. And if you're new here, hit subscribe now, because you do not want to miss where this one goes. Zanesville, Ohio, an hour east of Columbus, the kind of town where people still know their neighbors. Deborah Frazier was rushed to the hospital, cooperative and devastated, weeping through an account of 2 masked men who'd ambushed her in her own home. She described a walk she'd taken earlier that day, a missed call to her boyfriend, a red pickup truck still parked outside that told her something was wrong before she even opened the door. She said she stepped inside, found chaos, and then 2 men in masks emerged and shot her as she tried to back away. It was a horrifying story. It was also about to fall apart piece by piece. Investigators pulled every camera on the block, doorbell cams, security systems, anything with a lens facing the street, days of footage, lawnmowers, dog walkers, delivery trucks. Not one masked man. Not one. Inside the apartment sat 20 firearms, an entire collection Tom had built over years, every single one untouched. What kind of home invader breaks into an armed collector's apartment and leaves without taking a single gun? And the ransacking itself didn't look like theft. It looked like theater. Random enough to sell the story, but oddly precise in places. The Valentine's cards Tom and Deborah had exchanged, torn to pieces. Their photographs together, shredded and scattered across the carpet. That's not what burglars do. That's what someone does when they're trying to erase a relationship. A single fingerprint on a bedroom TV briefly looked like a break, until investigators realized the match belonged to a man who'd been dead since 2021. Turns out Deborah had once found her former roommate's body after an overdose, kept a piece of his furniture, and carried his fingerprints into a fresh murder scene without knowing it. A ghost, not a suspect. But it was the first sign that death seemed to trail this woman wherever she went, and that detail is going to matter a lot more later. Then the coroner's report landed, and it obliterated the entire timeline. Tom had died from that single .22 round sometime in a 4-hour window, ending around 1 a.m. on August 10th. Deborah's 911 call came in around noon, nearly 12 hours later. For her story to be true, 2 intruders would have had to kill Tom the night before, hide his body, and then sit silently inside that apartment for half a day without tripping a single camera in the neighborhood, only to burst out and shoot her the moment she walked back in. It wasn't just unlikely. It was physically impossible, which meant one of 2 things. Either Deborah had watched 2 killers vanish into thin air, or she was a killer, and the wound in her leg was self-inflicted cover. And here's the part that should have raised alarms months earlier. This wasn't Deborah's first stage emergency. 2 months before Tom died, Deborah called 911 from a state park, sobbing that a man had attacked her on a bench by the water. Scrapes, scratches, a hospital visit. She said she'd taken an Uber there to meet a therapist she connected with online. Small problem. When police talked to Tom, he said Deborah had told him something different that same morning, that this therapist had personally picked her up. There was no Uber charge on his shared account. When confronted, Deborah blamed a misunderstanding. Tom was asked point blank whether his girlfriend might have fabricated the whole thing. He paused. He admitted there had been stories before, and then he said the line that should haunt this entire case. He cared about her. They'd never had real problems. He wasn't ready to believe the worst. 7 weeks later, that choice killed him, because investigators eventually proved the park attack never happened. The therapist texting Deborah was coming from a spoofed number. Deborah had been messaging herself. There was no attacker, no rescuer, no Uber driver, just a woman alone in a park, manufacturing a crisis. And this pattern of false reports stretched back nearly a decade. Nobody connected the dots. Then Tom ended up in a closet. Before we go further, if you're into cases where the investigation itself becomes a real thriller, make sure you're subscribed. Because the next twist is the one that turns us from a murder case into something much darker. A second boyfriend who had no idea any of this was happening. When police traced Deborah's movements the night Tom died, they expected a friend's couch. What they found was another relationship entirely. A man named John Anderson. Someone Deborah had been seeing on and off for roughly 10 years. Living with his father not far away. John had no idea Tom Waddle existed. As far as he knew, Deborah worked as a live-in caregiver for an elderly dementia patient, which was why she couldn't see him as often as she wanted. That elderly patient was Tom. He was 66. He did not have dementia. He was her boyfriend of nearly a year, and she had rewritten him into a background character in the story she was telling a different man. Worse, she'd used John without his knowledge. Days before the murder, she asked him to call Tom's phone and leave a voicemail, feeding him an exact script, pose as a fraud investigator from their bank, reference a supposed case on their joint account, and schedule a call back for August 9th at 2 p.m. John recorded it, thinking he was helping calm down a confused old man's banking worries. He had no idea he was helping cover up a theft. Deborah had quietly pulled $4,300 from the account she shared with Tom and needed him distracted just long enough that the money wouldn't be questioned. That fake 2 p.m. appointment could never actually happen. And on the very day it was scheduled, Deborah killed Tom. Sit with that for a second. She used one boyfriend to impersonate a bank employee and stall the other boyfriend, the one she was about to murder that same night. Then came the phone. Deborah had wiped it, but deleted isn't the same as gone. Digital forensics pulled a search history that reads like a countdown. Before the murder, how to load a gun, how long a bank fraud investigation takes to resolve, the night Tom died, worst place to get hit in the head, followed minutes later by what .22 ammo looks like. And at 8:16 the next morning, 5 hours before she ever dialed 911, she searched how long gunshot residue stays on skin. Each search was a rung on a ladder. Learn the weapon, learn the kill shot, then learn how to erase it from your own hands before anyone tested them. Tom's phone told its own story. That night, its signal left the apartment and traveled with Deborah to John's house. The next morning, the two of them went hiking at a nearby gorge, and somewhere along that trail, the signal died forever, almost certainly swallowed by the woods or the water. The physical evidence closed every remaining gap. Deborah's DNA was on the straps used to drag Tom's body. Her DNA was on the duct tape, binding the trash bags around his feet. And in a zip bag, investigators found a single glove carrying both her DNA and gunshot residue, evidence she couldn't explain away as part of frantic break-in, because it had clearly been used and kept the night she pulled the trigger. When detectives finally sat her down, they laid it out piece by piece. The phone, the searches, the timeline that made two masked men mathematically impossible, the DNA on the tape, the DNA on the glove. She denied it, then softened, then claimed the search history was research for her own suicide, then denied everything all over again. It didn't matter. The evidence didn't need her to confess. It already had. Here, reconstructed from the evidence, is what actually happened on the night of August 9th, 2023. The apartment was calm. Deborah told Tom she wanted some air, maybe a night at a friend's. He said that was fine. He always said that was fine. At some point that evening, she picked up his own .22 revolver, the gun he had personally taught her to shoot for her own protection, walked up behind him, and fired once into the back of his head. Then she went to work. Trash bags. duct tape around the feet and torso, Velcro straps to drag him across the floor into the closet, a comforter thrown over the top, gloves on, one zipped into a bag for later, his phone pocketed. Around 7:30 that night, John picked her up. She seemed off but wouldn't say why. They spent the evening at his place playing video games and watching TV, while Tom's body cooled in a closet 4 miles away. The next morning, she searched how to clean gunshot residue off her own skin. She and John hiked to a gorge, and Tom's phone signal disappeared for good somewhere along that trail. John dropped her back at the apartment before noon, alone now, with the body she'd hidden the night before. That's when the staging began. Drawers pulled open, belongings scattered. And then, deliberately, she found the Valentine's cards Tom had written her, and tore them apart, found their photos together, and shredded those too. Not evidence for a burglar find, but a woman erasing the only proof that she had ever loved him at all. Then she picked the .22 back up, the same gun, pointed it at her own leg, pulled the trigger, and called 911. Deborah Frazier pleaded guilty to murder in March 2024. Life in prison. Parole eligible in 2047. In her hospital interview, before any of this evidence existed to trap her, a detective had asked her what should happen to whoever killed Tom. Her answer came instantly. They should go to prison for a very long time. She was right. If this case got under your skin, subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover cases like this every week, and the next one might be the most disturbing yet.